Being able to front split like this took me 811 days. Amongst three other movements that I've been training simultaneously, the clean, the middle splits, and handstands, this by far took the longest amount of time. And you're about to figure out why it took so long. Here is my front splits progression breakdown.
There were three main reasons why I got started.
I was training for press to handstands, and hamstring flexibility was a key component in getting the beautiful press. So I thought, if I have to lengthen my hamstrings anyway, might as well do so by training the splits. I love running, and doing the front split is a great way to open up the hips, which is ultimately beneficial for building the running form, the optimal running form that I don't have yet. Finally, it's so cool.
So there began the journey. Disclaimer: extensive warm-up was done before each split session by either doing a full yoga flow or weight training. So here is a progression breakdown. This is how I looked on day 1. Being in that position itself was uncomfortable for my knees, so my roomie's corgi butt cushion really saved my day. And you can tell that I started with zero flexibility, which meant that I can only get better. First few months of training, I made pretty solid progress, but the rate of my progress slowed and the growth greatly diminished as the days went by. So I started looking at mobility experts online to figure out what I was doing wrong. And I came to realize I had two main problems. First, I was overly relying on hamstring flexibility, while my hip flexors stayed relatively immobile. Ideal splits comprise 50% hamstring and 50% hip flexor flexibility. But I was putting much more emphasis on training hamstrings, as that was my main motive behind starting the splits, without recognizing the proper importance of the hip flexors. Lack of hip flexor mobility was compensated by doing an open splits, where my hips and body opened up and my back leg was externally rotated. Nothing wrong with open splits, but I was aiming for a square splits, where my back legs were in a neutral position with my hips facing forward, which requires more hip flexors engagement. Number 2, I was mostly doing passive stretching, always using some kind of assistance from the floor, stopping the gravity from shredding my muscles to the fullest potential. Based on my studies from mobility experts online, flexibility training should be approached more like a strength training, progressively overloading your muscles by adding weights or movements. I had to give enough stimulus that my muscles are not used to, so it can physically adapt to the new range of motion. In short, strengthening the length for both hamstrings and hip flexors. So I began to allow more gravity to stimulate my muscles and focus on strength movements like the Jefferson curl and Nordic hamstring curls for the hamstrings, and split squats and weighted stretch for the hip flexors. With proper solution and stimulus, I slowly began to see progress again. However, that last few inches off the floor felt stubbornly impossible. Then on day 811, this finally happened. Doing the full front splits with both hamstrings and hip flexors touching the floor. I know, it's far from perfect. My hips aren't still fully squared, my hip flexors still need to open up more, but it is a milestone that I wanted to achieve. This was a long and challenging journey, primarily because my hip flexors were so weak and it took forever to open up.
And I made this video not to suggest that 800 days is how much it should take you to achieve the front splits. In fact, I feel like it should take you a lot less time if you solely focus on achieving the splits, unlike me doing multiple different trainings at once. But I did make this video to deliver two important messages. Number 1, diverse representation. Seeing all these people online doing the splits under 30 days or even quicker made it hard for me to accept my slow progression and embrace my own pace. It's truly inspiring that they could do the splits under such a short duration of time, but I felt like that wasn't necessarily the accurate reflection of time and effort needed for many other people, like me. So this is the video that I needed that I couldn't find when I started training for the front splits. That it is more than okay to go at your own pace. Please remember, every body is different, and therefore, everybody is different. Number two, be intentionally slow. Throughout the progression, I realized that going slow might actually give you a faster result in the end. Whenever I over push myself chasing after quick results, my joints simply did not appreciate it, so I had to take longer recovery from training. On the other hand, slow and mindful intensity of training was optimal as I could continue to steadily train without having to take extensive recovery. Fast and efficiency-based training may seem great in the short term, but I felt that being intentionally slow gave me faster result in the end, simply because it's more sustainable and healthier. All in all, training the front split is merely a great tool in expanding our body's mobility, which in itself I feel like is a long-term commitment. So cliche as it sounds, treat front splits, ultimately our body's mobility, like a marathon, not a short-term sprint. Being mindful of your speed might actually give you more optimal results in terms of longevity. So just stay consistent and persistent. Thank you for watching. I sincerely appreciate you, your time, and your precious attention, and I hope you have an amazing day.